This is Damian Macy of Friends of the Marshall Public Library. It is Tuesday, December 13th of 2022. And to add to our oral histories, I'm with Mr. Don Gard today, who lives in Marshall but is from the Darwin area. And I think he has some very interesting things to tell us about past history of Darwin. So with that, here is Don Gard.
Thank you, Damian. There's a lot of things about Darwin that I don't know, but I do know that John McClure, and I believe his family, came out of Kentucky, crossed the Ohio River. I don't know how far up the Indiana side he came, but I'd say he probably crossed possibly at Vincennes. There were still Indians around then, 1818. He built the ferry, the first ferry, in 1818, and they used to call it McClure's Bluff. Well, a bunch of people got together and decided to change it to Darwin after that naturalist, Charles Darwin. And John McClure donated 2 lots in Darwin, one for a bank and one for a jail. Well, the bank never got built. Now, I believe the jail, they were up side by side, up in the middle part of the town. I think possibly Todd Kirby owns them lots now. John McClure, I think, died like in 1875. And I presume that he brought his family with him in the horse and wagon. Of course, he was looking for a place to get out of Kentucky, and they finally found this bluff, which is higher than the Indiana river bottoms. And he thought, this is the perfect place. He stopped, and at one time, lots in Darwin were selling higher than they did in Chicago.
I had heard that.
Yes.
Do you know how he was able to get those lots? I mean, were they like at a public sale somehow?
The lots were sold. I can't remember who the first one that bought the first lot. There was like 37 lots sold to different people. I've got it in my book here somewhere. Some of them went for like $20. I think the highest went for around $100, which was a world of money back then.
It was.
And Darwin at one time rivaled Chicago, rivaled Terre Haute. What killed Darwin, and I'm glad it did, is the National Road. And it went through, then Vandalia Railroad went through, Terre Haute prospered, and Darwin went down, which I'm glad it did.
Well, Don, that same thing happened to my great-great-grandfather who started Castle Finn.
Castle Finn, yes.
Because the highway and the railroads were down.
Right. So anyhow, that's basically the story of Darwin. There's stories that people know about Darwin, the older folks that are all gone now. They could have told more about it. Like I said, I did not live in Darwin, although I spent a lot of time over there farming. Ran around with the Thorpe boys and the Dasher kids. They all grew up. None of us had any money, you know. I probably still owe Maud Paddock for a 6-ounce or a 8-ounce little bottle of Coke, which she charged 6 cents. Well, I was named after her grandson, Don Terman, who was killed in World War II. He'd only been overseas 2 weeks.
Okay.
On a B-17, I think it went down in the English Channel. And I was always her favorite. Well, eventually I figured out why. Just as sweet a lady as you'd ever want to be around. They used to have, that was the gathering place in the wintertime for all the farmers to come in. And people gather. She had an old couch back there, and I remember she also had the post office in the west side of the store. Todd Kirby owns a building now. And she had an old brown dog in there. He shed hair all over that couch. People sat, the kids would sit down. Yes, yeah. And Lambert and Mandy Hammonds, John Hammonds over at Martinsville, and Jess and Jim. They used to live west of us over there towards Route 1. Well, Joe McCammon, he was an ornery scutter. He was Rosalie Bowen's son.
Yeah.
And she married Shorty Bowen. And a good guy. Shorty, he farmed over in the river bottoms with us. Well, one night, Joe had a big wad of bubble gum. And you'd sit back there on that couch, and I can still see him sitting there. And you get hot, you get sleepy, you doze off. Well, Joe took off John's cap, I presume. Maybe he didn't have a cap on. And he got that bubble gum all hot. And it ran down over his head. And his mother got home. She seen the mess it was in. She had to cut all of his hair off, and she had a temper. Rosalie Bowen. Oh my gosh, she had a temper. Anyhow, Mandy come in, and Lambert, and here come Rosalie, and she went right back to Joe McCammon. I said, Rosalie, your son put bubble gum in my son's hair. Oh no, he said, Joe wouldn't do nothing like that. Ho 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 ho. They didn't know Joe, and he wrote some good articles on Darwin That Advocate. I've got a bunch of them up now, so saved. And so there was always something going on in Maud Paddock's store. The people would talk. My dad would get the floor, and I forget, there was something about a car that I can't remember his name, that he started up a different car company. And I'm sure you remember that. Well, they had Ford, and they had Chrysler, and the Chevrolet GM, and he started up another one in, I think, Ypsilanti, Michigan.
Oh.
The Tucker. The Tucker. And my dad said, oh yeah, he said, everybody ought to buy a Tucker. These other companies were trying to push him out of business, and they eventually got the job done. Well, it wasn't a few months later, my dad went and bought a new Plymouth or a Chevy or something. I said, wait a minute, to buy a Tucker.
That Tucker was an expensive car at that time too.
Oh yeah.
It had a lot of innovations that were ahead of their time.
Oh, way ahead.
Yeah.
I've seen the story, and I felt sorry for the man because they did push him out of business. He had a better vehicle than they had.
Oh, yeah.
Faster. He had a padded dash, maybe a breakaway windshield, a rear engine motor or something like that. And it was fast. So, well, my dad, he took a lot of kidding from buying the other car, whatever it was, Plymouth or Chevy or Ford. And but there was always something every night going on in that Maud Paddock store.
But now, Don, you were living in Marshall at that time, is that right? Or were you living in Darwin?
Oh, I was out west of Darwin in the house.
Okay.
This probably happened before I was born.
Oh, okay.
Or while I was 1 or 2 years old, because I was born in 1946. January 3rd. And there was things just, Peck Miles, when he come home from World War II, the first boy he seen was my brother Jerry. And he always thought the world was my brother because that was the first child he seen when he come back from Europe. And Maud Bowen, who lived next door, I don't remember, he died in like 53. That was Margaret and Pard Bowen's father. And he had an old tractor sitting out in the field, which back then you could leave him sitting and nobody bothered him. Well, you can't do that.
Heavens no.
We found out in the river bottoms for years. But anyhow, somebody greased his seat. And my dad got the blame. And my dad said, I didn't do it, Lord. Well, I found out it was Peck Miles. There was always something going on. My dad at one time, at 21 years old, was the youngest road commissioner in the state of Illinois. He ran for the election, which he wasn't a politician. But anyhow, there's a bridge down there by Joe McCammond's mom and dad's place, or stepfather's place. It's called the Cattle Bridge. And it's opened up at the bottom where the little creek drains through there, so the cattle can go from one field to the other. Well, my dad was supervisor over that. And times were hard. This was back in the 30s. And Sport wanted a job. Well, my dad said, I've hired all the people I can hire. Well, Sport had a temper, and so did Frida. They come in the store and got talking to Dad. Well, one of them jumped on him in the front, and his wife jumped on him in the back or something like that. Well, that didn't last long because my dad was as stout as a bull, and you didn't mess with him. Well, us boys found that out real quick. And anyhow, he didn't hire Sport, which at times were tough. I mean, this is during the Depression, in the 30s. Well, my father's mother died when he was 15 years old.
Oh dear.
So he had his dad to take care of and my Uncle Marion. And my dad was only 15 at the time. He would cook breakfast for his dad and Marion and himself. And then he would walk over to Route 1 and send Marion on down to the Sherman School, which is south of Snyder right there.
Okay.
I went there for 3 years. And anyhow, he walked to Route 1, stick his thumb out, and hitchhiked to Marshall, and did that for 4 years. And he was the first one in the family of the boys to graduate in 1930. He told me, I believed anything he said. The first day I was a freshman going to high school, my dad said, now, son, he said, when you go in, you see Charlie Bush, he said, walk up and say, hi, Cocky. I did. Oh, young man, come with me. He went in the office, took me in there and said, who told you to call me that name? I said, my dad. He said, well, who's your dad? I said, Frank Gard. Okay. He knows. He said, Charlie Bush lived down around Walnut Prairie, said the orneriest, cussingest, pick up cigarette butts and smoke them barefooted. Well, he got kicked out of the theater down there, banned from going to the theater in West Union. But once he got married, his wife got him straightened out. He got a college degree. But I never called him that name again. And I told my dad, and I said, boy, did I get chewed out. He said, well, for I said, I did what you told me to do.
Didn't work, did it?
It didn't work. My dad just laughed.
Yeah, he was really quite a fixture in the education system.
Oh, he was, yes. And I got along with him fine after that.
Just a rough start.
Yes. When I'd see him coming, I'd kind of go another way, try to get away from him, you know.
Going back to some of the early history of Darwin, there was a period of time when the county seat was at McClure's Bluff,
Right.
and then moved to Darwin.
Right. Yeah.
Is-
Well, it was actually up at Aurora Bend.
Aurora Bend.
Yes, yeah, which was maybe 2 miles north
Yeah.
of Darwin, mile and a half, something like that. And that was supposed to be a good steamboat landing.
Yeah.
In fact, Albert Werns has, it's over here at the courthouse now, one of the stones, foundation stones that's grooved out in the middle. They dug it up when they was farming that with a chisel plow. There's 3 more down there somewhere.
Huh.
Some of his relation, they farmed it, have put it into a program or something for butterflies and stuff like that, you know.
Okay.
It's not good ground.
Yeah.
It's all sloping.
Kind of prone to water too, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a big gully down through there. It needed taken out of production. I mean, it's just, it's more of a hassle than it was anything. But Albert, they found that stone.
You mentioned school. Now, did you go to, I'm sure, a country school in the
Yes.
Darwin area? What school was that?
I went out to Snyder,
Snyder. Okay.
down that road to the Sherman School
Sherman.
for 3 years. And then I got transferred to Marshall. The Sherman School, I think, stayed open 1 more year. Well, I think there was 3 of us in my class, Harry Dean Hillington, Linda Hunt, and me. And I remember walking out there with my older brother, which he was 5 years older than me. Well, the time he got to the schoolhouse, I was still coming down the road. I mean, he could take big giant steps, and I was just 5 years old, couldn't keep up. And I don't think, I can't remember, maybe about 10 times in 3 years that my dad and mom took us to school. I mean, I had 4 buckle overshoes on, and you walked, you know.
The school bus didn't take you there, did it?
There was no school bus,
No.
no. And I thought, well, you didn't know any different. You know, that's what your dad told you to do, you did it.
Oh, yeah.
And then I think back to what he had to do was a lot tougher than what I did. And so anyhow, I got transferred to Marshall. And that's when I took that one picture. I asked them girls in the 4th grade or that whole class, they never could figure out who that girl was. It was me.
Do you remember some of your days at the Sherman School? What it was like?
Yeah, a few of them I remember. I know we had to go up to the Washington Schoolhouse, which was right up the road. It's just as close, if not closer, than the Sherman School, and it's still there. Had to go up and do a square dance or something. Sat there and me and Linda Hunt, Harry Dean Hovington, and some other, Bobby Collier, I think. I can't remember all the kids. I probably done it under protest, but all I had to do is look at my dad and you will do it.
You made it.
You'll do it. So that was the only time I ever remember going into that schoolhouse during school. I'd been in it a few times. In fact, Paul Dean Blocker just died here a year or 2 ago. He still owned it.
Okay.
It's just kind of in a triangle area there, and then there's a road on the west side that goes down to the Darwin Ferry Road, which borders my dad's property. Rick Minsker lives down that road. And But that's the only thing I can remember is that having to do that square dance or some kind of a dance. I think it was a square dance. Well, I wasn't much of a dancer. Still not. You know, I couldn't. I was kind of a goofball, and I was bashful, and I was backward.
That's all right.
I
Got you through life fine.
Well, yeah. Some people think maybe I talk too much now. I'm making up for lost time.
Why not?
You know, of course, there's a lot of things I don't want to talk about that the police wouldn't be too happy over. You know,
We'll erase that.
but yeah.
This thing with this ferry, and I think that's been kind of an unusual thing about this area,
You're right.
is having an active ferry until rather recently.
Right.
Do you know where and how that got started, and
That what now?
when and where it got started? Who owned it first, or was it built there? Did someone build the equipment and bring it in?
You mean the ferry?
The ferry, yeah. I mean, originally.
I'd say John McClure.
Okay.
Of course, back then there was no buildings there.
No.
Probably a lot of lumber, hickory, and walnut and stuff. And he probably cut the trees down and maybe brought in some equipment from somewhere. Sawed the planks. And the ferry was nothing like the one we last had. It was probably a little. And at that time, over the years, there was a lot of ferries. I know Kenny Paddock and Durwood Paddock grew up in Darwin. They were both in World War II. They were both officers. They went to the University of Illinois. They sent their clothes home to their mom and dad in Darwin, and they'd wash them and send them back. Well, they ended up and graduated. Durwood, I think, I never did meet him, lived in Bluffton, Indiana. Kenny, the older one, lived somewhere in Maine or Massachusetts, somewhere. I've met him a few times. Very nice guy. And they made it through college, made it through the war. Kenny, I wish guys like John McClure and the later people, if they could have write a diary.
It'd be wonderful to have today.
Oh my gosh, to read that.
You mentioned they were in college and they sent their clothes home. How did they send them home?
I have no idea. They would box them up and send them. Well,
I guess there was a postal service in
there
that
was
time,
a postal
so maybe
service.
postal.
They'd probably have to hook the horses up to the stagecoach or something. I don't know. But they did. That's what my mom always told me. And she grew up with them when they were kids in Darwin. My mom at one time and her sister Velma, I think Velma was with, lived in the river bottoms across the river. The house, I presume, they had it up on stilts. It wouldn't have been much of a house. Well, when the river got up, they went back across. Where they stayed, I don't know. But she would walk across the field, and I've coon hunted over there. She would walk across the field over to the corner by the Rynerson Lane, or the road, to play with the Gavy girls. I don't know if that was Beulah Gavy or who. I never did ask her. There was a lot of questions I should have asked, and had an audio to tape her. But they eventually ended up moving over to Darwin. Like I earlier said, my grandmother, who I never did, she died like 9 years before I was born, so I don't remember her. But they'd lost a child, Helen, and so it was my mother, Cleoma, and her sister, Velma. And I know Velma told a story one time about starting an old Model A up or something like that. I think it was a Model got it started, but she didn't know how to drive. And she kept going around the block by the schoolhouse and coming, and of course it was all dirt and gravel then. And finally somebody come out, got the car stopped or something. Lucky she didn't get hurt. Me and my younger brother done that one time, but it wasn't a car, it was a tractor, a W9 International, which I thought was huge, which it was at that time. I can still remember pulling that switch, and it was parked in the west end of the white barn. It was a pin barn. It was one of the last ones built in this county. The old barn burnt down back in '47. Lightning hit it and caught the hay on the car and down, burned her up. And so me and my little brother Steve, I can remember sitting on that steering seat, and the wheel right in front of me, and I pulled this switch out, and it was in low gear.
You were going.
It took off and idled down all the way in low gear. We went right through the barn doors. The doors come up over the hood, caught the muffler. I can kind of still see that. And I seen him coming, so I jumped off and got down behind it. My little brother got up on there, and he was driving, and the doors caught him about right here, rolled him off, and I could kind of knock him out for a little bit. Well, I jumped back on it and run through a gate where my dad kept a bull for a while. Somehow I got turned 90 degrees, and I seen the woods way up north. I was headed for that. Why, I don't know. Run through a woven wire and barbed wire fence, just going slow, you know. My mom finally come out, pushed the switch and shut it off. Well, I believe we probably got whippings that night. And we we deserved them. We was getting one about every day, you know, always doing something. We even rode ponies in the house one time. Me and my little brother got him up on the front porch, got the door open and went through the kitchen and made a right turn into the old original room of the old house. Here come my dad. Oh, he said, what in the world are you? It wasn't exactly his words.
Probably.
What do you think you're doing? He said, turn them porties around, take them outside and tie them up to the pump. And I thought, we tie them up, we're going to have to get off. And when we get off, we know what's coming. And it did. Never done that again. Yes, oh yeah. Oh, my dad, he was stout. So there was always something going on. One night I decided I'd been watching a Western and they had a roundup. Well, we had 5 or 6 ponies and a horse, and I decided we was going to have a roundup that night. Mistake. I let them all out. Next day my dad finally found them all. Another whipping coming.
That was another roundup, huh?
Yeah, no more roundups after that. So there's always something going on. We instigated a lot of it. My dad told us to leave home twice. Well, the first time we made it over close to Margaret Bowen's house, who was our neighbor to the east, her and Pard, and here come my dad in an old pickup truck, and he whipped us, threw us in the back home. Well, the next time, we made it all the way to Darwin. Spent the night in the old schoolhouse, slept on benches, started a fire in the old potbelly stove, which had a big crack in it. We didn't care. Come next morning, I believe the Tharp boys spent the night with us, if I remember right. Next morning, by golly, we were hungry. And I said, maybe we better go back home. So it's a wonder my dad didn't kill us. Some of the things we done, but that's
Those are what things though that make early days memorable.
yeah. We never come to Marshall much. I mean, went to Darwin. My younger brother wouldn't walk. He'd always stick his thumb out. Well, I would walk from home if I didn't have a bicycle or something. I'd just walk to Darwin. And my brother, he'd sit there and wait for somebody to come by and pick him up.
I can even think back in my school days in college, hitchhiking was rather common. I mean, kids would go home for the weekend.
Yes.
But my gosh, today's day and age, who would even pick someone up?
Yeah.
I can't picture
You
it.
want to be careful.
Oh my lands, yes. It's just a different world.
And it's not for the better.
No,
either.
it isn't.
Just, this crazy world.
You were not very far from West Union.
No, about 7 miles, something like
And
that.
I can even remember going through there as a youngster. There were quite a few buildings and there was a theater. It was
Yeah.
not in operation at that time, but I remember those
Yes,
buildings.
Yes, yeah. West Unions went downhill, and I hated to see it. But they call that progress. I don't, but
Now, going back to Darwin, I remember reading that there was a lot of river traffic,
oh yes, yeah.
and it
yeah.
became quite a
Yeah.
shipping point for anything coming into the area,
Yeah.
and shipments of grain and things
Yeah.
going out.
I've heard Tommy Warren say that his great-grandfather used to take corn down to the river up north of Darwin, about 5 miles, load it on a boat, and they'd take it to New Orleans
Yeah.
and sell it. This has been back in the 1840s, 50s, somewhere along there. There's also a house, the John Dickerson house, I believe is possibly the second oldest house in Clark County. It's right south of the old gravel pit there where the road winds and goes into Darwin. And there's a road that takes you down to the road that goes into West Union. Big 2-story brick house, 2.5 stories. I've been in the house. John's gone now. His dad was Roy Dickerson, and Ruth was a wonderful painter of pictures.
Oh, yeah.
She painted my mom and dad's house and made 2 or 3 copies, maybe only 2. I had mine for a long time. I finally gave it to my younger brother, and he's got it out there at his house. I've got a picture I bought up at the auction barn, Knowles' Auctions. I was sitting back there, and they was going through the pictures. I said, it was a little dapple gray pony. We had 2 of them. I got to looking at that. I said,
Look familiar, huh?
that's our pony. And I looked down at Ruth Dickerson painted it. And so I think I bought it for like $5. Nobody wanted it. And I've got it. Well, Mary Lee Burns, who married my cousin Ed Thompson, he just passed away about a 1.5 years ago. Lived up in Savoy, right outside of Champaign.
Oh, yeah.
And she brought a picture down of Marvin's Mill, which sat over here where Casey's and Mel Thompson's shop in that street angled off, and Route 1 went right by it. Well, I've got that picture
Wow.
painting, and Ruth Dickerson did that one. And she would
And
just
that became Newberry's grain.
Newberry's, yes.
Because my dad worked for John Newberry.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. She would take pictures and look at them, and then she could draw it.
Wow. That's really an art.
Oh, she was really good at painting. But her husband, he was a school teacher, and I've heard my dad say that he taught at Darwin and some other schools, and then bigger boys, like in the 8th grade or something, they'd get rowdy and he'd work them over. whip them, and couldn't get away with it today.
Oh my gosh, no.
He'd be in trouble, he'd be banned, but
Even my wife used to teach, and she said, my goodness, if she was teaching today, she'd be arrested.
oh yeah, you couldn't do that kind of stuff today. So there was always something going on in Darwin. I always heard the story about Bill Renshaw and Joe McCammon. Joe, my dad said, was the worst driver in Clark County. He couldn't keep a truck or a car between the ditches. And he always wanted to drive 100 mile an hour. He picked Bill Renshaw up, who lived right across the street from the red brick store. They went to school together. And he said, come on, Bill. He said, we're going to go for a ride. And he said, well, where do you want to go? He said, well, I'm going to go down around the cemetery here. I'm going to take that S-curve at 40 mile an hour. And Bill slapped his knee. He said, I bet you can't do it.
That was all it needed to do it. That was the only thing needed for him to do it.
Yeah. Well, he tried it, and it was a brand new GMC pickup at Shorty Morning, just bought it. Well, he didn't make it. He turned it over on its side. Well, he comes running back up the store, red brick store, all sweaty and hot, and it was for summertime. It was probably a pretty hot day. And my dad was there, my Uncle Mary and my Uncle Clayton. And my dad said, well, Joe, what's the matter? He said, I just wrecked Shorty's truck. So my dad gets on the phone, calls Rosalie. Oh boy, she was hot. And my dad said he could hear Shorty in the background said, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him. That little so-and-so, I'm going to kill him. And of course, that was his stepson. Well, then my dad said, well, Joe, you picked Bill Renshaw up. Where's Bill? He said, well, I forgot all about him. Well, he didn't forget about him. He knew where he was at. Bill was probably walking back up the road. And 20 years later, Joe told me, he talked to the mechanic. And of course, back then, the fenders were about that thick.
Yeah.
You couldn't hurt them hardly. He'd entered the door and something else. And he talked to the guy, the body man that worked on that. He said, I'm the one that wrecked it. Well, Shorty banned him from driving anything except that little whizzer motorbike. I'm surprised you allowed him to drive that. But he would take it and drive either north or south of his house and cut across over north of the old riverbed and go through Darwin and back out to his mother's house. Well, he called that the Baja of Darwin. Joe was always great to listen to because he had stories. Him and Bill would have wrestling matches in Harmon's yard, Harmon Renshaw. Joe said, well, I could beat him at wrestling, but he said in boxing, they had boxing gloves. He said, Bill was just too fast for me. Well, that's understandable because Bill finished second in the state in the high hurdles. And just about won it. The guy just barely nipped him at the line. Bill was tremendously fast. Finished fourth in the low hurdles. So then he told a story about Joe was on top of Bill and Harmon come out and hit him in the side of the head and knocked him off because he was whipping Joe. Just always something. I know that my dad and Harm Renshaw and me and some of the Tharp boys and the Dasher kid, we scratched our names in an open soft brick on the store on the east side. Well, Gary Tharp told me, he said, our name's not on there. He said, Dasher kids got mad at us and scratched our names out. And it had my dad's name and Harmon Renshaw's, and somebody said, Frank Gard's a SOB, and then Harmon Renshaw's no good. Always something going on down there. I can still remember Bus Revolt, who lost his leg in a corn picker. Used him crutches, tremendously stout. They had these metal poles outside on the porch to hold the roof up. I could see him doing this, holding himself straight out with one leg. And of course, using them crutches every day, you know.
Oh, sure, he built up.
Oh, he was
tremendously.
tremendously. And I couldn't do it, and I was 14, 15 years old, you know. So, of course, I remember Bus crossing the ferry a lot. He had, it seemed like a handle on his clutch. He could push in and then change gears and then light out on it. That was like an old Massey or maybe an International, or I just don't quite remember. It seemed like it was a Massey
The
Harris.
vehicles were a lot simpler then.
Oh yeah, a lot simpler. I helped the Warrenses down there, Tom, or Albert, and Aaron. And if they'll set the computer screen up for me, then I can run it. But other than that, I can't operate it because I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I don't have a computer. I don't want a computer. I have trouble with my little flip phone. People told me, well, you need a smartphone. I said, no, I don't, because I'm not smart enough to operate it.
You're smart by not having one, I think.
Yeah, phone bill's a lot cheaper. So, like I said, there was always something going on in Darwin.
Done a few years ago, I don't remember exactly when it was, but there was some work and proposals to scoop out the Wabash River to get it deeper, because at one time there were big boats and everything that came all the way up to Terre Haute. Has anything ever developed on that?
They've talked about that for years. Nothing ever happened. In fact, I hate going down Darwin now and seeing that ferry sitting down there right north of the sandbar, sitting at an angle on its edge, tipped up like it. Makes me sick. If I had a lot of money, I would get the boat, pull it up on that sandbar, which is right behind the 6 acres that my dad had over there. And he said it was the best ground he ever had because of the river getting over it and leaving all the fish and the scales and stuff. It always produced. And but I just talked to my nephew Seth down south of Darwin the other night. I went down and got my genealogical books that he's had for a couple of years. And he told me the old man from Oaktown came up asking if he could walk through the woods to look at that boat. Well, he's already taken the side boat with the little Alice Chalmers motor on it. He's got it, so, and he had plenty of time to come and get that ferry boat. One guy close to Darwin offered him $1,000 for it. I won't mention his name, but he's a cheapskate, but he's got lots of money. I think he bought that ferry for $4,000. And he, like I said, he had plenty of time to come and get it. All he needed was 4 motorboats on the side. When it broke loose, I've got pictures way back in here. I can find them. There they are right there. This was a time when this new ferry broke loose.
Oh, yeah.
And I was with him when we went and got it. Cables broke. There's Seth right there. But it had so much trash on it underneath. My nephew, Jay, rode it down the river when it broke loose. And he got it around 2 curves and right behind what I always call Buster Rose sandbar. And it got tied up to a tree as it come around the south side of that sandbar. And he said as the current took it, it pulled that cable into the tree, and he said it went in about that far because there was a lot of pressure.
Lot of force. Oh, yeah.
Well, we didn't realize it at the time. There was a lot of trash underneath the boat that piled up. Well, we cut it loose, and we ended up losing it about a quarter of a mile going down the river. So, and we had some powerful boats, like probably a 60 or 70 horse motor.
Some power there.
Yeah, and we first took the ropes way out in the water. Well, the best thing to do is hook it right up the side of the ferry boat. That's where you put all your power, right up against it. We went down there and hooked on it again after it went to the Indiana side. We was moving about 1 mile an hour out in the middle of the river. We had 6 boats on it pushing.
Oh, my.
2 right behind it, then 2 on each side. Well, anyhow, I was in this boat here, I think, and we were on this side over here. I climbed up and got out of the boat and got on the ferry, and I seen all this trash starting to move. So I told the 2 guys behind it, I said, get the heck out of the way. I said, the trash is coming out.
That's your way.
And it could upset you. Once we got all that trash out of there, we took that boat about 7 miles an hour up through there. I said, well, where's some water skis? I said, I believe I could water ski behind this. And we took it right back up the landing and got the cables hooked back up and got the ferry going again. So there was always something.
I remember as a youngster going across that.
Yes.
And it wasn't metal cables on each side, or at least on one side, that kept it
Yeah.
going from one side of the river to the other.
Yes.
Okay, now, with those cables in the water, other boats couldn't go up and down the river, could they?
No, but once you got across, it didn't take 10 minutes to cross the river.
Right.
Then they could run up and down. That was a problem when you was farming over there. If you broke down,
Right.
the ferry was on the Illinois side. Whoever, like my brother would take me over to get on a tractor and farm all day. Well, I'll be back at 6 o'clock or 7, whatever it was. And if you had a breakdown, you sat there until you seen somebody running up down the river in a motorboat. Hey, come and get me and take me over. And I'd walk up to Bunker Hill, get on a phone call, and the same way with my nephew when after my brother passed away. There was a lot of things that back then, I can remember going across with a 560 International, 2 wagons. This was the Aircorn days. Going about 7 miles north of the ferry, which went, at that time, Warren's has had an airstrip down there behind our barn on the Zion Road there. If you flew off that airstrip, you went right over that north end of that field. We hauled corn from there all the way down to the ferry, 2 wagons. Well, you'd get down to the ferry, you'd unhook one of them because that 560 didn't have enough power to pull 2 wagons up the ferry hill. So you'd unhook one, take it across the ferry, go up there and unload it, bring it back across, park it, and then pick up the other one and take it across, dump it. Then you'd come back and you'd hook them back together, then you'd go back north. And this was, seemed like in December trying to get corn out. No heat housers, just lots of clothes on. Of course, when you're a kid, you don't get cold.
Oh, no.
It don't bother you as much. Would today. But we weren't doing anything any different than anybody else.
Well, now, Don, the last several years, that ferry was primarily for farmers, wasn't it?
Right. That's actually what it was put in for to start with.
Right. But now what are they doing?
The DNR Department of Natural Resources bought all the ground
Oh,
in the river bottoms, turned it into trees and some kind of a program. Well, after that, the ferry sat there on the Illinois side, and nobody would take care of it. My dad would probably have a fit, my brother too, if they seen what happened to that ferry boat. This boat was built in 1986 because the other one had sunk 3 times. It was a wooden boat. This was supposed to last 30 years, which basically it did. But it just makes me sick to go down there and see it sitting like that.
so there's no farming on the,
No, nothing over there.
okay, I did not know that.
You go out to the Ryan Road, which takes you all the way out to 63. Well, my dad told me there a family that lived out there by the name of Ryan Harrison's. They had a boy that was in World War II, and he was in on that death march of World War II and made it through.
The 10.
Plus we had a man from Darwin, Ernie or Jimmy, the heck was his last name? Fact, down in the schoolhouse, he was in on that death march, and he pulled his breeches legs up, he had bib overalls on, and showed me the scars where they whipped him with bamboo. The Japanese did, but he survived.
I had a great uncle who was a survivor of that march too.
Yeah, that was terrible the way they were treated. So the DNR owns it all, clear down to the county line road, which between Sullivan and Vigo County.
Okay, I didn't.
When we was farming over there, the semis, we'd bring semis in, load the corn out. 1,000 bushels better than taking a 300 bushel truck and taking it across the ferry, you know. The Werner's farm beside us down there, Tommy and Al and Aaron. But they had to go over this little bridge out there at the bottom of what they call, and it's still going, Syosi oil field. The road goes straight out to 63, right south of the, I believe it's Fairbanks, goes straight out through there. But there's a bridge there, it kind of goes up and over, just a little short bridge by a creek. Well, it's a 3-ton bridge. Well, a semi, you're going out there with a lot more than that on it. Never bothered it, you know. Which it made it a lot easier when you can load 1,000 bushels instead of 300 and get rid of it and wait on another truck to come in, you know. I was within, one year I was farming for my brother over there on the I&M ground, Indiana, Michigan Power Company. I was back there near the woods on the inroads. I didn't know it at the time, but me and Tommy Werner was over there one day, and here come the police, state police, and the game wardens. They drove right through the old corn stalks right back there to this woods. Well, what the heck's going on? They got a dead body or something back there? Well, what it was, there was marijuana plants back there. I was within 20 to 30 yards of it and then didn't even know it. Well, everything around the old horse weeds are all laying over, you know, frosted hit them. Yeah. That marijuana was growing.
Healthy stuff.
Oh, it was healthy. And I said, well, that's the first time I ever seen marijuana.
Did they cut it?
Oh yeah. And then they took it up to the ferry on the Indiana side of the ferry landing and burn it.
Burn it.
And I asked that one state cop, I said, hey, I said, the wind's out of north, can I get on the south side? Maybe I'll get a buzz.
Good whiff.
He got to laughing, he said, you don't really want to. I said, no, I'm just kidding you. You know, I'm just kidding you.
Oh my goodness.
So, always something going on over there. I caught a guy poaching one day, poaching deer. I was in a big blue tractor coming out by the Ryan Harrison Lane there. heading east. I seen him get out of his truck, and he kind of scraggly looking, you know, and he was shooting at these deer. And, okay.
Get that back in your,
I got on the tractor and went over and talked to him. And, I mean, he was a nice guy. But anyhow, he said, well, my family's hungry. I said, why don't you get a job? You know, I don't want to hear this excuse, my family's hungry. Get a job. Anymore, you couldn't have nothing over there sitting on the road. My dad said when he first started farming over there, you could leave a tractor and your toolbox sitting on there with a 5-gallon can of gas. It would be there for a week, nobody bothered. You can't do that today.
it'd probably be gone in 24 hours.
It wouldn't take that long.
Probably not.
I went over there one night coon hunting by myself, took the ferry across, tied it off good. We had a cable coming down to hook onto the ferry on the Indiana side. Didn't last a week. They took a cutting torch to cut the cable off and stole it. My dad had 2 dual wheels rolled in the river. Now I believe one of them they found down in Hudsonville. I think maybe he found the other one. But I went coon hunting over there by myself one night. I went one once. Well, I pulled into this woods just a couple of weeks before that. Me and my brother, I was helping him pick corn down on I&M. And this was on a Friday night. Well, I wanted to go to the football game. Well, my brother said, one more round. He was good about saying one more round. And 2 hours later, you get to the last round. But anyhow, I seen this blue and white Ford Bronco driving by, and there's 2 guys in it. They was driving real slow. Well, I pulled off the road so they could get by, and I stared at them. They looked like hooligans. And so my brother had a John Deere combine in. He hid it back in the brush. Boy, you could sit clear over there by Round Pond, and we couldn't see them. Then they could see where you hide your equipment. You had to hide it, or they would set it on fire. We come back Saturday morning, 13 lights had been cut off of it. So we had to replace all the lights. There's a road, when they put the new levee in down it at Worst out, they got the people would come down with them big 4-wheel drive pickups and just getting them mud puddles and cut ruts, and then you're coming down there with big equipment.
Oh my.
And hit them ruts, it's liable to break something.
Sure.
When I would come back out, I'd have the disc folded back up. I'd drop the disc down, try to fill in them ruts. Well, you had to do that every time you was over there.
Were they doing it just for, quote, recreation?
Yeah, just in there tearing stuff up. And then they drive out there. I don't know how many times we've seen where they've knocked corn down. Just drive through your cornfield and knock it down. Or the bean field.
With the development of that, you mentioned it for the Department of Naturals, resources and all. Are there a lot of wildlife now? A lot of deer in there?
Yeah. People don't. I used to coon hunt, loved coon hunting. I would do it today if my legs were good. And it didn't bother me going over there by myself. I talked to these guys one night over there. They were riding horses or mules, I can't remember, right along the ferry on the north side up to that woods there. Well, the wind changed and come out of the east, and when the wind's out of the east,
that's not a good sign.
The coons quit running. And I borrowed a dog off of John Bishop, and she was real timid, hard to catch, unless she knows you. I heard them guys talking, and their dog was out there just kind of boring around the field, running a cold track. I got within 50 yards of them, turned the light out, walked up to the field there. They didn't even know I was around. And I could see them taking their headlights shining the trees. Well, the dog never treed that coon. There he is, shoot him out. So I see him later on that night at the ferry. I said, did you guys do any good? Yeah, we got 8. Well, the dog didn't treat one of them. They poached him, or they shined lights on him. That's how they got him. Well, there was another outfit. That dog I was hunting got over by the Rynearson Lane, and I seen the lights, and I jumped my truck and ran over there real quick. They were trying to catch that dog to steal her, but they couldn't catch her. And finally she seen me, and she come over to me. I said, yeah, it's time to go. Time to get out of the river bottoms. All I have is a little 22 automatic. They might have had, who knows, high-powered rifle or something.
Oh, it is.
You know, so that today compared to what my dad had to go through, totally different. There's hooligans, thieves, thugs. I talked to the game warden, Max Winchell, one time over there. He asked me, he said, do you ever see any people down here deer hunting? I said, Max, you need to come at night, not in the daytime. I said, you can sit over on the Ferry Hill on the Illinois side during coon hunting, and you can see the light shining through the trees or on the ground. They're poaching deer, they're poaching coons, anything they can shoot. Just totally different.
You know, Don, we always hear about the old days
Yeah.
of all of the traffic and things on the river and the hooligans and everything. But yet, is it today? Is it really any different?
It's not. It might even be worse today. I'm sure there was bad people back in the steamboat days.
Steamboat, yeah.
Thieves and thugs.
And they always like to have, went overboard at the bar.
Sure.
You got into bar fights and everything along the river.
That's like up at Aurora Bend. I think I read in a report, they had a post that they tied thieves to. They had one guy that stole some chickens or something, and that was the only time they ever used it, but they whipped him. I don't know if he left the county or what, but now, right south of Aurora Bend, on the ground that the county owns, Fenton Hunt told me about 2 cemeteries. Well, Aurora Bend have one where the county is digging now, and I think they quit digging that spot because they found bones.
Yeah.
Well, Fenton Hunt told me there was 2 cemeteries, one for Aurora and the other one on the other side of that tree line, tree row in there. He called it Little Texas.
Never heard of that, Ray?
Yeah, why? Of course, Fenton he'd been going 12, 13, 14 years, something like that. I went to school with his youngest son. So he knew back in the 30s, you know, different things that I didn't know. So I farmed that ground, and I found pieces of stone out there. Tombstone, like limestone or something. So there is 2 cemeteries there. But we'll never know. I mean, who the people are, because there's no stones left. You know, like I said earlier, I'm into genealogy. I've got ancestors in Edwards County. They're not a direct line to me, but they are related because they come out of Hamilton County, Ohio, which is the Cincinnati area. Well, me and my brother, my cousin Melissa wanted me to go down to Choctaw, Lower Choctaw Road, because Tommy and Al own, I think, 63 acres down there. Well, there's actually only three fields down the bottom, like 19 acres, 20 acres. But up on top there was a pasture. Well, Albert's got the deed to that farm. He calls it Miller Barn Bottoms. I said, Albert, you need to look at your deed. Well, he don't care nothing about that, the genealogy. He said, there was tombstones back there. Melissa said, you and me will work on them. And I thought, yeah, she'll be sitting here in a chair and I'll be doing the work. And she'll help me some, but you got tree roots, you got a locust tree over that big with thorns sticking out that far. There was a Civil War boy stone leaning up against a tree. T.M. Gard is buried there. Thomas M. Gard, his wife Rebecca Gregory, and his son George. So me and my brother, I called him. I said, "You got to come and help me." So we went down there. We dug the holes. We don't know if we put them in the right place or not, but we redone the stones. Took the Civil War boy stone, which was stood about this tall. Dug down about 36 inches. Put 2 concrete blocks down there. That stone fit. There's a groove in that concrete block.
Yeah.
We put that stone right down there and braced it up solid so it's level on both sides, and then we poured the concrete. Well, Aaron wanted to use the bags. And I said, "Aaron, we don't have a concrete mixer." He said, "Well, it'd be a lot cheaper." I said, "Yeah, it would be." But I said, "We're not going to do it the Warren's way, we're going to do it the Gard way. We generally sell concrete, and we'll pay the bill. You all don't have to worry about it." I think it was $240 for everything. And we spent, I think, about 3 or 4 days down there working on that. Redid the stones, put them up. I didn't make it down this year. I usually spray Roundup in there. Morris Albert Warren's used to own the farm. He let cattle run through. He had cattle in there. Don Kendall used to bale it before he passed away. And Albert can still remember the barn over there. So I told Albert, I said, "If you look at your deed, there was a Gard living on this place before a miller." Well, I don't care about that. I cannot get him to go to the bank and look at his deed. He don't care. And so we got the stones done. But I didn't make it down this year to weed eat or anything. So he come here in, I think, 1856. Well, my great-grandfather and his 2 brothers came over from Licking County, which is the Gray Shot area, right west of Zanesville, about 10 miles or so, in 1861. So I think they were in correspondence with him. But if you go over around Zanesville, it's no different than Melrose.
Yeah.
Just hills and hollers. But they had so much flint laying in grounds over there, it was hard to farm.
Oh, yeah.
The flint for the arrows, the Indians that come in. In fact, they won't let you go up to it anymore. My cousin Hazel said there's a Black Hand Gorge, some deep places up there, but you're not allowed in there anymore because it is. She said we used to go up there. It was like 5 miles north of Zanesville or Gray Shot, somewhere up in there. I go over there for reunions. Well, the first time I went over there was in 2006. And I looked through the phone book, I found a Roger Gard. So I called the number up. And I told his wife who it was, and she said, "Well, you need to talk to Hazel." And I asked her another question, "Well, you need to talk to Hazel." Well, Hazel is the genealogist over there. She's about 84, and she'll tell you what she thinks, and she won't mince any words. Well, I found out we had a famous ancestor, or not an ancestor, a famous relative. He's a golfer, #1 in the world at one time, Jack Nicklaus.
I've heard of him.
His great-grandmother and my great-grandfather were brother and sisters.
Oh.
Well, Hazel likes to play golf. So she approached him over at Columbus on the golf course. You'd have to know Hazel. She walked and said, "Mr. Nicklaus, I just want you to know that you're some of my relation." Well, he kind of blew her off, and
That wasn't the thing to do, huh?
not with Hazel, no. She told him where he could go, and she didn't mince any words. And she said, I have no use for him now. That's not exactly what she said, but that's Hazel.
With the stones that you found, I guess there are a lot of stones that had no names, dates, or anything. I mean, it was just maybe a piece of rock and someone scratched it, which is gone.
Yeah, there's a little cemetery right north of Aaron's old house, which is back north and west of the Ohio Church. Well, my great uncle, I think, donated the ground, the cemetery ground at the Ohio Church for a cemetery. Well, across from Aaron's house in a holler, there's some stones in there. One of them is a Civil War boy, a Janney boy. That was a Janney farm at one time.
Arkansas.
He died in Andersonville prison. And the boy at Choctaw, he was only in for like 3 months. Wiley Cloud was his name. I'm trying to figure out how he's related to our family. I haven't found anything yet. There was a Cloud down in southeastern Indiana, in Switzerland County, or somewhere down there, is where his father or grandfather came from. I still haven't figured out why he's buried there. If them folks would have just kept a diary and wrote things down.
Well, at that time, too, in the early days, if someone passed away on a trip or something, they just buried him wherever there was a spot.
Right, yeah.
I think that's what happened in most cases.
Yeah. So I know Maisie Garber, I seen a paper that she wrote back in 72.
She did a lot of genealogy research.
Oh, yeah. She, I don't know, somebody or her possibly, found a piece of stone that had T.M. Gard's name on it. Where's it at? What happened to it? Morris Albert never put a fence up around those stones. Well, the cattle were running through there. We got that problem in Ohio. My great grandfather, maybe 3 greats, was one of the first 3 families into Licking County. We got to go up there and look at the stones one time, but now the guy that owns that ground, his son lives there, he won't let us on the property. He said, you folks don't even know who these people are. It don't make any difference, that's our ancestors. But to some people that'll mean nothing. The sandstones, now they're riding 4-wheelers through it.
Oh, they deteriorate so fast anyway.
Sure. Motorcycles, motocross bikes, the guy don't care. And it was a Pioneer Cemetery. Well, Hazel went and tried to get a hold of a lawyer, and he said, there's just not much you can do.
In the area, again, coming back to that Darwin and along the river, are there many Indian artifacts that can still be found, or have most of those already been harvested?
I think a lot of them's been harvested, but there's still some. I even found a couple of arrowheads on my dad's ground.
Really?
East of his house over the woods. Usually they're in pretty good shape on clay ground. You get over next to the river on the sand. I know Bill Bertram over at Martinsville had a world of them, and he knew where all the...
I knew Bill, and I saw his collection a couple of times.
Harry Dean Hovington has a bunch of them. Joe Hilbert had a bunch of them, but I think Joe's got stole in that
Fire?
Silver Moon.
Fire?
Yeah, somebody broke in and stole them. My dad told me that his dad or mother had a box of them, and she took red yarn around the arrowheads and hung them up on the wall. Don't know what happened to them. I never did see them.
I think as time goes on, all of those things become rarer
Right.
and less available or even able to find them.
Right, the ones I had, the few that I had, I give it to my grandson. And I like to hunt for that stuff. I know a boy over at, well, he was a boss over at Chastity, Glenn Williams. His son is Rowdy Williams, the lawyer. He has a pretty good collection. He does all that hunting. I've seen him over in Ohio bring it to the reunion. This one guy, he had a bunch of them. Which Ohio was the end of the frontier at one time, you know, right along the Ohio River. Well, the Ohio River, I've got 3 or 4 books by Alan Eckert on the Revolutionary War and the frontiersmen. Absolutely wonderful reads. He was a heck of a writer. Well, this lady I met in June down at the Ohio school, when me and Aaron was getting ready to move his planter, she come around the corner, her and her husband, Linda Barnard from St. Louis, but her grandparents lived in that area at one time. And I told her about this book called The Frontiersman. It's about a man named Simon Kenton. He's buried in Urbana, Ohio. He died in 1836. He, tall man, he was like 6'4", 6'5", back in the day when most people were 5'6", 5'7", 5'8".
He was a true giant at that time.
Yeah. He even saved Daniel Boone's life one time. Daniel Boone was shot in the leg outside the fort. He ran out and grabbed him and brought him into the fort. Daniel Boone got all the glory and the headlines, but Simon Kenton was actually a better frontiersman. And then there was one even better than him, and that was Louis Wetzel. I've got the book, but he was, well, today he would be considered a serial killer. He stood and watched. He'd always wait on the hill when his father went to the fort, wait for him to come back. Well, the Indians came. I don't know whether the Shawnees or the Iroquois or who it was. I presume Shawnee. They massacred the whole family, and he never forgot it. He went on a vendetta against every Indian, whether he was peaceful or not, and killed them. He got so good at it, he could load his muzzle loader on a run while he was running. And of course, one shot. And every time he killed an Indian, he would just tense up and scream his rage at the Indians. They finally give him a nickname called the Death Wind. Whenever they heard him, they know one of their fellow warriors had just been killed by Louis Wetzel. He grew his hair so long, it come down to the middle of his calves. He said, I wanted to give him a scalp worthy of taking. They never could get it. But he died in 1808 at 44 years old, west of Natchez, west of New Orleans in Natchez, Mississippi, on a farm. Well, this man, anthropologist, in 1942 decided he wanted to find his grave while he was buried on his brother-in-law's farm. The man found the grave. I don't know if he had a headstone down there or not. So he gets Louis Wetzel excavated. Well, beside him was this rifle. The stock was gone, rotted off. His brother-in-law's wife would not let him bring the gun in the house because she was afraid it would haunt the house because it had killed so many Indians, over 100, possibly more, who knows. He had him moved to Moundsville, West Virginia, right along the Ohio, within 2 miles of where his original father's cabin was at.
Wow.
And on the tombstone, it says Deathwind. That's what the Indians, the name they give him.
Have you ever heard about the Winchester House
Yes,
in California?
yes.
We were there a few years ago.
Oh, was you?
When you talk about kind of
Yes,
mentally,
yes,
she had a mental problem too.
yeah.
A building, wow.
Oh, yeah. A lot of weird things
Oh,
go
yeah.
on. One time in my house, I live up there right across from where Herb Schaffner lived, up on 9th Street.
Oh, in Martinsville?
No, here in Marshall.
Oh, Marshall, okay.
Right west of the bank. Edgar County.
Oh, north, yeah, okay.
And I told my cousin, he said, why? He said, I don't believe in spirits. I said, well, that's fine. I said, I do. I felt a hand on my shoulder one night. I turned around, nothing there. And I got my daughter's dog, because they had 2 dogs, and she was always barking in the middle of the night. So they pushed her off on me. Well, every once in a while, she'll wake up from her little floor thing that she sleeps on, and she stares like there's something she can either hear or she thinks she sees. Well, I believe there's good spirits and there's bad spirits.
Oh, yeah. And they say dogs do have a sense of
They have a
what's
sense
going on.
of.
Listen, while you're talking, I'd like to take a look at your book there.
Oh,
too.
okay. Oh, is that still on?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Let me get that all started off.
No, that's fine. When we used to live on North 7th Street,
7th Street, yeah. Okay.
the big yellow house,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Matt Turner bought it, didn't
Matt
he?
Turner bought it from us.
Yeah, he's not my favorite person.
Well,
But anyhow.
anyway, we were in the upstairs. We had a little library with a fire in the fireplace. And my wife and I were sitting there one night. We were both reading.
Yeah.
And our dog was laying with her nose looking out the stairway to the hall and the stairway. It sounded for sure like someone was on the stairs. And my wife kind of looked at me and I looked at her. Well, almost that same time, the dog's hair absolutely stood on end. And she stood up and growled and was barking like crazy. And that's the only time we ever had a weird experience there.
Well,
But
I heard that singer Loretta Lynn. She lived in Hurricane Mills, Tennessee,
yeah,
and had a 2.5-story house or something and a veranda out front. She come driving up her drive. Went in the house, she seen a woman up on the veranda, young woman, in a white dress or something. So she asked her maid, said, who's upstairs? Nobody's upstairs. She said, yes, there is. I just seen her. Well, they went up. She was gone. Well, then they seen her. There's a cemetery right across from her house. This woman had lost her little son or something back during the Civil War or something like that. She was looking for him. So Loretta said, well, she's around here somewhere. I feel her. And I talked to her, but,
Don, do you have any knowledge of anyone else who's got documentation of Darwin history? And is it being put in the Darwin area somewhere for future reference?
unless it would be Ronald Dasher. That would be the only one I could think of.
Because I just look here at these things.
Well,
I don't imagine they're anywhere else.
If there's anything in here that you want to copy,
Oh, well, I just like history.
oh, I do too. I love history.
And I was just thinking, since this is so much of our local history,
Yes,
this
yes.
ought to be somewhere else where it's going to be kept and retained.
Well, if there's anything in there that you want to copy,
I've seen this picture.
I can leave the book with you. You look through it. And,
Well, I don't want to keep it.
oh, that's all right.
Do you know Eleanor Mackey?
Sure. Well, the Eleanor Mackey I know is married to Kenny Mackey.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes,
She
yes.
does a lot of history.
Yeah. I was with them. In fact, her and Kenny sat next to me down at the York presentation
Okay.
for the old York Trail.
Yes.
Now, because Kenny lived right down the road from my dad's place.
Oh, I thought so.
Yeah. So, of course, I've still got that piece there too.
Yeah, but she She's been doing a lot of things with the local history, and I'm gonna say, is she aware that you have all this?
I don't have no idea. I don't see her very often.
Well, I don't either,
There's
but
a picture of the old courthouse.
Oh, the old courthouse,
Yes.
before fire.
I just save a little bit of everything, just whatever I
Well,
can.
I just gave Eleanor a bunch of, I didn't,
Kenny Paddock wrote that to my mom and dad. I can't,
73.
in 73, okay. I don't even know what's in the letter anymore. I don't remember.
But anyway, I had given Eleanor a bunch of stuff on old teachers. My mother was a teacher and had
Yes.
some stuff.
Yeah.
And she was glad to get it, and I just thought, she ought to be aware.
Some people, don't like to share their history.
Oh, I know it.
I'm the one over here that is into the genealogy, and the Hazel's the one that got me into it over in Ohio. My little brother went with us, and I took pictures of my great-grandfather and great-grandmother. He stood up and made a speech at Flint Ridge State Park. And he turned around and he said, "Who are them people?" I said, "If you don't know what you're talking about, you shouldn't be standing up talking." I'll tell you that's your great-grandfather and your great-grandmother. And, oh, okay.
Okay. Oh, gee.
So anyhow.
Well, I think sometimes people think they know it all, but they don't.
Well, yeah.
We've all known a few people like that.
Yes.
But I think there's a lot of pictures that probably aren't anywhere else
Yeah.
that I see here. That
I know Ronnie has got more stuff than I've got. Like I said, he's 10 years older than me. And when he moved to Darwin with his parents, his siblings, I think he was already in high school. There's the lots in Darwin.
Darwin.
That's where the bank and the jail were supposed to be.
The jail was built, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, the jail.
I read
was
somewhere, I
built.
think,
Yeah.
and it was one of the only first buildings that
Right.
were built.
But the bank never was.
Right.
Is what I've been told. That's a dredge down on the ditch west or east of West Union and back north with the brick church. They were digging that ditch down through there over to the river. And of course, there's the Darwin Schoolhouse. Up there's my dad's barn, and believe, right there, that's my grandpa's house right over there. That's where I spent many a night.
Now, I'll be very honest, I have not been to Darwin for years.
It's not.
But is there much left there? There's 4 or 5 houses, aren't there?
It's just a junk hole anymore.
Oh, gee.
Gary Tharp, he's got cars, he's got boats.
Who has?
Gary Tharp.
Oh,
There was a letter from my sister-in-law, Doris, and Jim Hilbert to my dad. And they put on there, "From your Republican friends." Well, my dad was a Democrat.
but he took it anyway, didn't he?
Yeah, I hear.
Oh, that's neat.
I'll show you this here real quick. Let's see if I can find the story. It's in here somewhere. No, that's not it. Right there. Okay. There. That's the truck that went in the river. That's my dad.
What year?
95, I believe.
September 94. September 94.
94, okay.
Yeah. I'll be.
I've still got that tractor. They took it pictures in like July.
That's not the one you ran through the barn, though, is it?
No.
I know
No, this is years later.
I know it.
I got him that farm sign, Centennial Farm, but I don't have it now. My nephew got it, which I'm still mad over that, because I'm the one that filled out the paperwork and sent it in.
Oh, how neat. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and there's stuff over here that, flowers. That's some of my younger brother's daughters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He had 5 girls.
Oh, man.
Yeah. They're playing little balls just for the camera, you know. But my mom, when they asked her, she didn't tell the story correctly. She said they farmed 300 acres. Well, they didn't. They farmed a lot more than that across the river. I forget, probably 600 acres over there. And then 200 out there on the farm. And she just got her stories wrong, you know.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so I saved it. Well, if you'd see my 2 garages, I save everything.
Well, I do too, unfortunately.
I've got, my God, I save pop cans. I save the little tabs off the pop cans, put them in a jar.
Well, I'm going to leave that there.
Yeah.
I don't want to tear that plastic
Ain't no
edge.
big deal.
Oh,
Yeah, that's the last issue of Farm and Ranch magazine.
so many of them have gone out of business. And,
Yeah, I don't know why. I always enjoyed their magazine.
oh, I do too. I used to take that at one time.
Yes, Birds in Bloom, I take that magazine.
We've taken a magazine called Reminisce,
Reminisce, yes.
but it's now gone.
I just talked to a lady, I seen her thing in the Grit magazine. She was looking for pen pals. I've never been a pen pal in my life. She lived in Livingston, Montana. And I love the West. Anything to do with the West. I've got a cousin that lives between Reed Point and Columbus, Montana. And he worked at Eli Lilly for like 35 years. There's John McClure's
Okay.
stuff. He used to, and he does look a little bit like Elvis Presley, but he would dye his hair black and put on some shows. And I just talked to him all here a couple of weeks ago, and he got a big elk within 200 yards of his house, a 6x6.
Oh boy.
Yeah, but his neighbor boy, a lot younger than him, he got the big one. He said it's a long monster. And so they had 2 elks that down. So he went down over the hill in his dually pickup and got the elk loaded up, but he couldn't get up the hill. So his neighbor goes home and gets his truck with a winch on, winches him up over the hill.
The moose are another thing, that those racks that they have are just a mammoth.
Oh yeah, just sticking out through there. Yeah.
Oh, this, I really appreciate seeing these.
Oh yeah, just I think these are the stories that Jamie run off for me. I'm always got her on the computer looking for stuff.
She's great about getting
Yeah.
research done on that.
And there's Simon Kenton. They were both, as far as I'm concerned. In fact, Daniel Boone even admitted that Simon Kenton was a better frontiersman than him. In fact, he ran the Shawnee Gauntlet, I think, 9 times, when most people couldn't make it one, because they run you for like 200 or 300 yards with people on both sides with whips and sticks and stuff.
You were gone before you got very
Yeah,
far.
and if you got knocked down, you started over. Yeah, so that, I don't know if that's taking, that's the Ohio School.
Ohio School, huh?
Linda Bernard sent that to me in like
That was
1980.
1908 or 18.
08
Yeah.
or something maybe. Yeah, she sent that to me. And like I said, if there's anything in here you want like a copy, have at it. That's the Flint Ridge State Park. All right. Hazel is right there. She's a little girl. This was in 41.
41.
Right there is Fred Nicholas. There is Jack Nicholas, a little boy, 1.5 years old. Right there is my grandfather. Will Gard. How he got over there, I kept looking for maybe my dad or my Uncle Marion or somebody that drove him over. I don't know how he got there, unless he took a bus
Well, could be.
over there and stayed. He had I reckon she'd be a cousin or something. They would always send Christmas presents to each other. He'd send her a box of chocolates and she'd send him something else, I don't know what. He died in 1955. I just barely remember him because I was never in the house. I was always over in the woods or fishing or hunting or squirrel hunting or something, or working. But her and him, I forget, there was I'm trying to think, I'm getting where I can't remember things. Hazel told me about her aunt down in Marietta, Ohio. She was never married. She was a professor of history or something in some college. She traveled to courthouses all over the country and dug up the records. Didn't have a computer. She had file cabinets after file cabinets full of stuff on the Guards and the Browns. Well, I got the picture of my great-grandfather, Jeremiah Gard. He died in 1860 or 1866, I can't remember. Never left Ohio. He was the one that owned that house down over the hill from that Pioneer Cemetery. And Hazel had this tintype, which most of your tintypes back then were like that. His was about this wide. And she said, well, I've got to go to Pittsburgh to get it done that anybody would work on a tintype. It was real dark, inky.
Yeah.
And I said, Hazel, don't take it. She said, I'll mail it to you. I said, no, don't you mail it. If it gets lost, there's no more. I said, when I come to the reunion, I will get it, I will bring it back. I took it to Mick's Picks over in Terre Haute. Mick said, I love working on that stuff. He made me 3 copies of the old 16 by 20 original size.
Big one.
And I had it, I bought a frame up at the auction barn one time, a black and gold, the old style frame.
Oh, yeah.
The price just kept going and going and going, and I just kept my finger up because somebody left a bid on it.
Okay.
I got it for I think $165. I said, no problem. I know who's going in it. So I put my great-great-grandfather in it, Jeremiah. Well, when my grandson graduated here in 13, he joined the Air Force that fall. And he kept asking his mother, right south of me on the corner, Chuck English had a 87 Z28 Camaro.
Ooh.
My grandson lived over in Ron Murphy's old house, that yellow house up there on the corner, with his dad and his stepmother, Renee Cunningham. He would drive by and he said, Mom, have you said anything to your grandpa about that red Camaro? No, but I will. Well, he'd ask all the time. And I said, I'll tell you what, Logan, if you join the Air Force, I will buy that car for you.
Wow.
I'd like to have that one, but it's a good thing I didn't when I was his age. Well, he joined. And so I bought the car. And I ended up taking it to Abilene, Texas. Once he got out of basic, he said, I hope I never see Texas again. He didn't like it. But once he got to Abilene at Dyess Air Force Base, he got to where he liked Texas. Well, then he ended up going 6 months to Afghanistan. And now he works for the city of Marshall.
It's a long way from Texas.
Yes, oh yeah. He's still got a friend, and all his gear and Air Force equipment is still down in this guy's house. Well, I went down to the guy's house. In fact, I took that Camaro down to him, like in 2015. 2.5 years later, I had to go back and get it. Well, 17 and a half hours from Abilene, I'd made it back to Marshall. And it's sitting in my garage while my Buick is setting out. My brother said, well, you got that Camaro, why don't you pull it out and put your Buick? I said, that Camaro's worth a lot more money than that Buick.
And it's one of the few things that probably keeps going.
That's right, it's an 87, and my grandson hasn't drove it in 2 years. It just sits in there. I fill it up with gas, I'll take it for a little spin.
I was gonna say, you need to drive it once in a while.
Oh, I do, I drive it once in a while. He didn't want to keep license up on because he knew he wasn't going to be driving it.
Well, we had several cars, and we had with insurance and license and taxes, and all, we decided we need to have a garage sale and get down
Yeah. In fact, my Buick's license are due this month. I hardly ever drive it. It's not a bad car. I bought it at Pilson's. I had a better Buick before that one. It was a Buick 2004 Park Avenue. I wouldn't have traded that thing for 10 Cadillacs. In fact, I bought a Cadillac off of Gerald Wilt up there on Mulberry.
Oh, yeah.
It was a big, long, I forget, a 97 or something like that. I've never owned a Cadillac in my life. Nice car, but it had that North Star motor. And aluminum heads, they warped.
Yeah,
And I got rid of it.
Yeah.
Bought that Buick. I never missed that Cadillac at all. That Buick was, well, I took my grandkids December the 27th of 2011. I said, kids, I said, would you like to go out and see Mount Rushmore and the Black Hills in Montana? December 27th, you normally don't take off and go to Montana.
No.
Well, I checked the weather reports. It was going to be nice weather. And Lenny told me, she said, yeah, I'm packing my bags right now. She was ready to go. I had to talk Logan into going. He was 16 then. And we get out there, and I took him to the Devil's Tower and the Crazy Horse Mountain and all that. And then took on around. And I said, well, we got time. I'm just going to drive on up to Billings. Well, I was about 40 miles from where my cousin lived. And so I get in the hotel, and I didn't know it was night. I couldn't see very good. And the kids were hungry. So I said, well, they got donuts or honey buns in them canteen machine. And so Lanny gets on the phone and tells the mom, said, Grandpa's not feeding us. So I got chewed out over that. And she said, well, won't you order a pizza? I said, well, I never thought about that. I ordered a pizza.
Kids always love that.
Downtown Billings, Montana, 26th or 27th Street. I got one piece of pizza and they gobbled everything
I was
else
say,
up.
I'm surprised you even found one.
Oh, yeah. So I called my cousin up while they were eating the pizza, and I said, hey, what are you doing, Walt? He said, well, I'm sitting in a chair. He said, what are you doing? I said, I'm sitting in a chair too. I said, I'll tell you what, how would you like to buy a 2004 Buick Park Avenue? I said, drives great, rides great, it's dependable. He said, well, yeah. He said, if it's cheap enough. I said, well, it's only been driven 1,500 miles in the last 3 days. He got quiet and said, wait a minute. He said, where are you at? I said, I'm in Billings, Montana. Because he'd always send me Christmas cards to say, come see us soon.
And you're not that far.
I went out. He said, you're kidding me. I said, no, I'm not kidding you. I'm sitting here in Billings. He said, I'll see you in the morning at the McDonald's in Columbus. And it's just a little bit of town. So we pulled in. While the kids were eating, I went across the street and bought me some cigars. Well, Walt had already got over there. And he said, you need to follow me to find my house. It's on top of the mountain. He could see the interstate from his house. And so we spent the night, we stayed up till midnight, reminiscing, talking. He used to live down in Pine Meadow, farmed. But his dad, Walt, died in '63. So he had to do the farm while he was a sophomore in high school. And he finally got on at Eli Lilly, spent like 35 years up there as a supervisor. And so we said, I said, well, I said, these kids are sitting here going to sleep, and so am I. I said, I got a big day tomorrow. I said, we're going to turn in. Well, me and Laney went in one room. Of course, up there on that mountain, the wind blows constantly.
The air's a lot thinner too.
Oh, yeah. And Logan took the bottom basement. It's like a 3-level log on. And Laney said, Grandpa, hear that wind? That sounds like a ghost. I said, no, Laney, there ain't no ghost.
But it is an eerie sound with
It's
that
an
whistle
eerie
around
sound.
corners
Yes.
and windows and stuff.
And so anyhow, next morning, 8 or 8:30, we left and made it to Murdo, South Dakota.
Thank you so much. It's been a delight.
Oh, yeah.